John stood frozen, staring at the shallow grave in the backyard. He couldn't believe what he had just found. His heart was racing, and his hands were shaking. His mother, the woman he had missed every day for years, was dead. And even worse, she had been buried here all this time by his own father. John remembered the day his mother disappeared like it was yesterday. He was just a little boy then. One morning, she was there, smiling and making him breakfast. The next day, she was gone. His father told him she had gone away and wasn't coming back. She said she wanted to find herself. Just 1 week later, his father brought home another woman. "This is your new mother," his father had said. "She's my wife now." John had been confused and sad, but he was too young to understand what was really going on. The new woman moved in, cooked meals, and acted like everything was normal. As the years passed, questions grew in John's mind. Why did his mother leave without a word? Why didn't she ever come back or send a letter? His father never wanted to talk about her. Every time John asked, he got angry and told him to stop asking questions. Although John was still in shock from what he had discovered, memories of his father's second marriage started to come back to him. His father had acted like everything was perfect when he married the new woman. For a while, he smiled more and tried to play the role of a good husband. But it didn't last long. Just like he had done with John's real mother, he slowly began to change. He started coming home late at night, smelling of alcohol. He would argue over small things, shout for no reason, and sometimes throw things across the room. He became angry and violent. The woman tried her best to stay calm and fix the marriage, but it only got worse. John remembered hearing loud fights from his room. He would lie in bed, covering his ears with a pillow, hoping it would all stop. But it never did. Then one morning, the house was quiet, too quiet. John came downstairs and found his father sitting at the table alone. The woman was gone. She had packed her things and left without a word. She couldn't take it anymore. Since that day, John's father had been all alone. No wife. He sat in silence most days, drinking and staring into nothing. The house that once held a family was now just a sad, broken place. And now, with the truth about his mother finally uncovered, John looked at his father in a new light, as someone who had caused so much pain. A man who had destroyed his own family with his own hands. John stood at the shallow grave, tears still in his eyes. He knew things would never be the same. But he also knew he couldn't stay silent anymore. His mother deserved justice. And John, after all the years of lies, deserved peace. "I need to give my mother a proper burial," John said softly, "and at least inform her people that she's dead. They deserve to know. She deserves that much." Tears streamed down his face as he sat on the old bench outside the house, his heart heavy with pain and regret. His best friend sat beside him, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. "I really feel for you, John," he said. "I can't imagine what you're going through. All these years. You thought your mother left you. You were angry with her, hating her in your heart. But the truth was something no one could ever have guessed." John nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. "I feel like I failed her," he whispered. "She needed help, and I was just a child. I couldn't protect her. Daniel shook his head. You were a child, John. This wasn't your fault. It was your father's. He took her life and then lied to you. But now you know the truth, and you're doing the right thing. Giving her peace, giving her family the truth. That's the best thing you can do now. The next morning, John went to the police. It was hard, but he knew it had to be done. He told them everything he had discovered, the shallow grave, the suspicions, the memories, everything. Officers came to the house, and soon the place was swarming with activity. John also reached out to his mother's people, relatives he hadn't spoken to in years. When they heard the news, they were heartbroken. His mother had been deeply loved by her family, and they had spent years wondering what had happened to her. The story said she ran away. Others feared the worst. Now, finally, they had the truth. Together, they planned a proper burial. The ceremony was simple but filled with love. People came with flowers, with tears, with memories. John stood by the grave, watching as his mother was finally laid to rest with dignity. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. I'm sorry it took me so long. But I know the truth now. And I'll never forget you again. There were no words to fix what had happened, but at least now, John wasn't alone. He had the truth. He had closure. And he had a chance to start healing. After the burial, there was a deep silence in John's heart, but this time, it wasn't the silence of confusion. It was the silence that follows truth. He had done what he needed to do for his mother. Now, it was time for justice. The police arrested John's father the very next day. He didn't fight back. Maybe he knew the end had finally come. Maybe he had run out of lies. As they led him away in handcuffs, he didn't even look at John. In court, John stood before the judge and testified. His voice shook at first, but he spoke with honesty and pain. He told the court everything he remembered, everything he had found, and how his father had tried to erase his mother from their lives. The evidence was strong, and the truth was too clear to ignore. The court found Mr. Thompson guilty of murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment, with hard labor. As the guards led him away, Mr. Thompson finally broke down. He looked old and tired, nothing like the man who once ruled his home with iron fists. He regretted everything, but it was already too late. The damage had been done, and some things could never be undone. In the prison yard, surrounded by cold walls and iron bars, he had all the time in the world to think. He thought of the woman he had killed, of the son he had lost, of the quiet house that now belonged to the past. No visitors came. No letters. No family. Just silence. John, on the other hand, began to rebuild. Slowly. With time. He visited his mother's grave often, bringing flowers and talking to her as if she was still there. He kept in touch with her family, learning more about the woman he was only now beginning to understand. As for Mr. Thompson, he would spend the rest of his life in that prison, working, aging, forgotten. And when his time would finally come, there would be no one to claim him. No one to cry. No one to give him a proper burial. The man who once took a life out of wickedness and pride would leave the world just as he had left his family, empty and alone. For a long time, John had a hard time trusting women. In his heart, he believed his mother had left him without a word. and that wound had shaped the way he saw love and relationships. He kept people at a distance, especially women, afraid that they would one day hurt or abandon him too. But everything changed after he learned the truth about his mother. Knowing that she didn't live by choice, but had her life taken from her, something inside him began to heal. The anger he had carried for years melted into sorrow, and then slowly, into peace. For the first time, he allowed himself to truly remember the love his mother had for him, and to believe in love again. It was during this time that his relationship with Sarah began to grow deeper. Sarah had been there for John through it all. She was kind, patient, and never tried to force him to open up before he was ready. She listened when he talked, stayed close when he was silent, and supported him through every painful moment. She had fallen for John the moment she met him, not just for his looks or his strength, but for the quiet sadness behind his eyes. She saw a good man who had been through too much and still kept going. And John, once afraid to open his heart, found comfort in her presence. As his heart healed, John began to see Sarah not as someone who might leave him, but as someone who truly loved him. And more importantly, someone he could love back without fear. One quiet evening, under the stars, John got down on one knee and proposed. Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she said yes, her smile glowing brighter than the moonlight. It was a simple moment, but it meant everything to them both. Not long after, they got married in a small but beautiful ceremony. Surrounded by people who truly cared, including John's mother's family and his loyal friends. Each finally felt something he hadn't felt in years, pure happiness. John and Sarah built a peaceful life together. There were still hard days, memories that would come and go, but now he wasn't facing them alone. They held each other close through every season, knowing how precious life and love truly are. And so, after years of pain, betrayal, and darkness, John found love, healing, and a new beginning. With Sarah by his side, they lived happily ever after, not because life was perfect, but because they had each other. Moral of the story: no matter how long lies are hidden, the truth eventually reveals itself. John's father tried to bury his crime, both literally and emotionally, by hiding the truth and creating a false story. But years later, that truth came to light. This shows that no matter how dark or hidden a secret may be, truth has a way of rising to the surface. It teaches us to live honestly because lies can only last for a while, too. Never judge without knowing the full story. John spent most of his life believing his mother had abandoned him. That belief caused him pain, anger, and deep emotional scars. He judged her based on what he was told, not what was true. When the truth finally came out, he realized how wrong he had been. This teaches us not to jump to conclusions about people's actions without knowing what really happened. Sometimes the truth is far different from what we assume.